Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Laughter. You know an off-season has gone completely off the rails when a player who cost $92.5 million starts being mentioned like yesterday's leftovers. Not because he's bad, not because he's forgotten how to hit a baseball, but because the room suddenly feels too crowded. That's where we are with the Toronto Blue Jays and Anthony Santander. And before we go any further, make sure you like the video, share it with a fellow Jays fan who loves a bit of chaos, and subscribe because this story is only getting louder. They handed out that 5-year deal with confidence, almost with swagger, as if to say this was a cornerstone move, a line in the sand. Yet here we are, not even settled into the ink drying on the contract, and his name is the first one whispered when people start talking about exits. This isn't pub talk after one too many pints, and it's not some wild social media conspiracy. This is roster maths, opportunity, and a front office that has decided patience is overrated. When a club accelerates its plans, someone always becomes expendable, even if on paper they're supposed to be part of the future. The idea itself sounds contradictory at first glance, almost unfair. How do you spend that much money and then immediately consider moving the player? But baseball rarely rewards sentimentality. The news is simple but heavy with consequence. If another impact bat arrives in Toronto, Anthony Santander is suddenly very much in play. And when names like Bo Bichette, Alex Bregman, or Kyle Tucker float through the same conversation, that's not coincidence. That's a chain reaction. One move pulls another, and before you know it, the entire shape of the team changes. Toronto came into this off-season like a club that had stared at the mirror for too long and didn't like what it saw. They signed Kazuma Okamoto, added Dylan Cease, fortified the bullpen, and still kept shopping as if there was money burning a hole in their pocket. The 40-man roster filled up completely, every chair taken, no empty seat left at the table. And yet the Blue Jays stayed active. In baseball terms, that's the equivalent of someone opening the door and saying, "Don't worry, we'll make space." That's where this stops being about whether Santander is a good player. The question isn't talent or effort or desire. It's fit. The lineup he signed into doesn't exist anymore. Okamoto alone is a tectonic shift, not just because of his bat but because of the way he rearranges everything around him. Defensive flexibility sounds like a boring phrase until you realize it's code for people losing at-bats. Nathan Luke slides, Addison Barger moves, outfield spots tighten, and suddenly innings become a luxury rather than a guarantee. Then there's the part nobody enjoys saying out loud. Santander's best work comes when he's not worrying about a glove. His most dangerous as a designated hitter. Unfortunately for him, that chair already has a name on it, and it's George Springer. That contract isn't going anywhere, and neither is Springer. So now you're staring at an expensive player with recent injury issues, limited defensive value, and a role that's already occupied. That's when front offices start pacing the room at 2 in the morning. Ben Nicholson-Smith said it plainly, almost coldly. Any major addition will require subtraction. If Toronto lands someone like Kyle Tucker, there's simply no world where every outfielder stays. Somebody has to move, and Santander is the most obvious name not because he's weak, but because he's movable. Ironically, that's what makes him vulnerable. Being valuable enough to trade but awkward enough to replace. Of course, there's the contract, looming like a shadow over every discussion. 5 years, $92.5 million. Deals like that don't slide across the trade market smoothly. The return is rarely pretty, and the original team often has to swallow part of the salary. That stings financially and politically. Fans notice. Ownership notices. But sometimes the objective isn't winning the trade. Sometimes it's clearing oxygen from the room so something bigger can breathe. Zoom out and the philosophy becomes clearer. Toronto doesn't want to be careful anymore. Bob Nightingale didn't casually toss out the phrase Dodgers of the North for nothing. That's not branding fluff, that's intent. Depth, star power, and ruthless efficiency. In that world, contracts stop being promises and start becoming chess pieces. Nobody is untouchable if the move improves the board. Before we turn Santander into a villain in this story, it's worth slowing down. Internally, the tone is very different. John Schneider hasn't thrown him under the bus or hinted at disappointment. He's defended him, reminded everyone what Santander has already proven he can do. 44 home runs and 102 runs driven in during 2024 don't vanish from memory overnight. That kind of power doesn't grow on trees. What went wrong after that was his body. Injuries disrupted everything, timing vanished, rhythm collapsed. In 2025, the numbers were brutal on the surface. A .175 average, 6 home runs, barely over 50 games. It reads like a disaster, but it's also a fragmented season stitched together with frustration. Schneider isn't asking for superhero numbers. He's asking for health, routine, and a role that makes sense. Here's the harsh truth, though. Belief doesn't balance the books. If another elite bat arrives, Toronto can't keep everyone happy and productive. At that point, the debate stops being about whether Santander is good and starts being about whether he's necessary in this configuration. That's a much colder question, and it's one that makes even loyal fans uncomfortable. Think about it without spreadsheets or salary charts, just gut feeling. This is a team that smells opportunity. The division feels unstable. The Yankees are reshuffling, the Red Sox remain unpredictable, the Rays are clever but cautious, and the Orioles are talented but young. Toronto senses a window. When windows open in this sport, smart teams don't cling to comfort. They optimize. Santander becomes that car you genuinely like, the one that served you well, but suddenly it doesn't fit the garage anymore. Trading him might not feel satisfying in isolation, but it creates room for something else. Lineup flexibility, defensive balance, financial breathing space. Sometimes the reward isn't what you get back, but what you're able to do next. There's risk on both sides, and it's real. If Santander leaves, stays healthy, and starts launching 35 homers somewhere else, fans will howl. Social media will remind everyone daily. If he stays and his body betrays him again, the criticism turns inward. That's the nightmare scenario for a front office. Be wrong by acting or be wrong by waiting. The rumor mill only tightens the pressure. Kyle Tucker isn't a fantasy name anymore. Alex Bregman's chatter refuses to die. Bo Bichette's situation sits like a loaded question mark. Each possibility reshapes the roster, and each reshaping pushes someone closer to the edge. Right now, that someone is Santander. It's impossible to ignore the human side. Santander isn't a mercenary passing through. He chose this project. He believed in it. Players feel when a season slips away from them, when narratives turn sharp and unforgiving. Redemption matters to athletes, but baseball rarely pauses to allow it. Sometimes a player can still be very good, just not in that uniform, not at that moment. Fans are predictably split. Some see any talk of a trade as madness, a betrayal of power you don't casually discard. Others see redundancy, a luxury the roster can't afford. Analysts hover in between, understanding the logic while warning of the emotional and financial blowback. Strip it all down and the choice is brutally simple. Trading Santander likely frees space, enables another star, reduces internal congestion, but costs raw power and possibly money. Keeping him preserves depth, bets on health, but limits flexibility and risks another lost season. There's no clean answer, only intention. The most revealing part is that this doesn't even have to happen tomorrow. The mere fact it's being discussed tells you everything about where the Blue Jays are heading. They're done protecting feelings. They're chasing wins. In that pursuit, every name becomes movable, even one attached to $92.5 million. So now it's over to you. Would you move Anthony Santander to unlock the next big move, or would you gamble on the bounce-back story? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if you enjoy this kind of honest, behind-the-scenes analysis, share it with someone who lives for trade rumors, and subscribe because this Blue Jays offseason still has plenty of chapters left to write.